Welcome to the Recruiter Startup Podcast. My name's Dulta Doherty, and in this podcast series, I will be speaking to investors, advisors, entrepreneurs, and recruiters who are based all over the world, and we'll be discussing how to set up, scale, and operate a world-class recruitment company. Now, today's guest isn't just somebody who's an expert in the agency world. He's also one of the leading thought leaders in the internal space as well. He's the CEO of Candidate ID, and his name is Adam Gordon. And we had a great chat today about how we can use technology to predict and enable recruiters how to make more placements, both internally and externally. And I really tried to delve into the detail with him on how that'll affect your business over the next few years. And I'm kind of blown away by the product from a theoretical standpoint. I haven't got in there and used it and tested it, but I mean, the proof's in the pudding. They won the best recruitment startup at the Unleash World Conference in 2018, and he's just fresh back from another award-winning trip to San Francisco where he was rubbing shoulders with some of the giants of the industry. So, really great guest and knows his stuff, and hopefully my line of questioning got the best out of Adam to be able to help you guys set up at really get your pipeline in place so it can help you intelligently plan for the future. One of the interesting pieces we talked about is whether your next hire should be a piece of software or should it be another recruiter. I'll let you make the decision yourself. Over to Adam. Adam Gordon, how are you?
Hi, I'm very good, thanks.
Are you just back from San Francisco?
I am, yeah. Got back on Sunday, a day later than I was supposed to, but it was a good trip. We were in Silicon Valley for a few days, doing some events with Talent Tech Labs and Career Crossroads, and we ran through Silicon Valley as well while we were out there. So it was great.
What was that like?
Well, unfortunately, not as many people turned up as we thought were going to, but there was about 15 people. And so we ran one track at a time. And the quality of the conversation, however, was just terrific. Everybody was really engaged, and they were all quite savvy as well. So a lot of great talk about the future of talent acquisition functions, how restructuring is happening right now, how they can be more effective, how technology is making them more effective. We talked about artificial intelligence, and it really, really good event.
It's tough to interview you because there's so much that I could ask you. So I'm conscious of that. So because I don't want somebody's head to explode with all the information that you can put out there. So I want to keep it as concise as possible. You guys won the Unleash World Conference startup for recruitment things last year. What was that?
We did in October. So Unleash is the world's biggest recruitment tech event, or HR tech event, sorry. In fact, they don't call themselves that. It's about the future of work, basically, is what the conference is about. And they run a startup competition each year. And this year it was so big that in October, it was so big that they split it into 3 different categories. There was 52 entrants from over 300 companies that actually applied to join the competition. And we got down to the last 3 in the recruitment stream, which was 32 of the 52 companies. We presented on stage in front of a couple of hundred people, and we won that event. So that was called they actually called it the TA Battleground, was what they called it.
Okay.
we came second overall out of 5 complete finalists in the whole of HR tech across the world. But to be honest, winning the actual recruitment section is something I'm more proud of, because it was by far the biggest section of the competition. And quite honestly, the company that won, it provides mobile training for retail businesses. There's absolutely no comparison in terms of what the two products do. So I don't mind losing to an HR tech product that does an entirely different thing. If we'd lost to another recruitment product, I'd have been a bit disappointed, but we didn't. So that was a real game changer for us. And it allowed us we've won a couple of new customers as a result of that. We've actually taken on one investor and about to take on a second as a semi-direct result of that. And the ability to be able to put it on all of our literature and our website and all that kind of thing's been really valuable.
What led you to setting up your own recruitment tech business?
So I had no intention of setting up a recruitment tech business until a couple of years ago. I set up my own business in 2009. And the reason for that was because my mum died in 2008. She left quite a big house to me in Glasgow, but it needed, to me and my sister, it needed quite a lot of work done to it. And if I was going to keep the house, quite simply, I needed to earn more money. And the only way I was going to be able to do that at that point was go and work for myself, because we were in recession. And so there weren't a lot of job opportunities. There weren't a lot of opportunities to earn considerably more by making a job move. But at that time, I'd also identified there was a lot of organizations who had understood that social media might be useful for them, but they didn't know what to do with it. And I'd built up a methodology for how you use social media to build connections with people that you want to achieve influence with, and the kind of language that you would use, and how to get connected effectively, how to take those relationships offline. And I about a week before I actually left that business, so almost a full 3 months into my notice period, that's when I came up with the idea that that's what I was going to do. And I very, very quickly sent a message to a few old contacts of mine, marketing directors and HR directors, and said, if this service existed, would you be interested in it? And they said, yes, tell me more. And over one weekend, I put together all of the different materials that were going to outline what the services were going to do. In week one, BDO, the accountancy firm, gave me the business cards for 6 of their partners and said, if they want to work with you, to help them get connected with people they need to know from a business development perspective and from a recruitment perspective and strategic networking, etc., then we'll fund it centrally. 5 of the 6 said yes. So it was a pretty good start.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how it started.
If you were to describe what that was today, it probably sounds obvious because we're all using social media and we kind of know a lot of the ways to do that. But back then, I'm sure everything was brand new. What can you kind of basically describe what the process was that enabled?
Yeah, sure. So we called the service Exec Connections, and to be honest, we still offer that today. And the way that service works is individuals who have a need to get connected at scale with people they need to know on LinkedIn, on Twitter, maybe on Xing or other social networks, they give us a brief. We then advise them on how they need to look online to make sure that they look compelling and magnetic to people they want to attract. And we go and find all the people that they might want to hire or they might want to get connected with for some other reason. And they approve that list, and then we just log in as them and do it all for them. So I'm sure we are not strictly compliant with a few social networks' terms of business, but it was a pretty innovative idea back in 2009. It was very, very effective. And as I say, we still do quite a lot of that today because our customers need to run our technology.
Yeah,
our customers still need to build up their list of potential candidates, and this is one of the ways that we go about helping them to do that.
And getting into the granular on that, is that what led you to talent pipelining and scaling out what you're doing?
So in 2015, I was talking to the world's biggest pharmaceutical company, and I said to them, how do you go about sourcing for people? And they said very proudly, 100% of our hires in the EMEA region are direct sourced. I said, okay, that's great. And how are you getting them? And they said, well, some of it's through advertising and some of it's through our people spending time on social networks, going and reaching out to, identifying individuals and reaching out to them. They then revealed that 70% of those people that they hired through this process were already on Taleo, their applicant tracking system, at the point that they reached out to them on social media or the people applied through an advert. They were already on there. And I thought, this is really crazy. They're spending money, a lot of money, on people's salaries to go and do direct sourcing and job boards to identify, to bring in shortlists. And these people are doing things to generate candidates that already exist on their database. So why can't they? So I went into a bit of detail with them around why weren't they just getting the people from Taleo in the first place? And then when I realized the reason for it was because these databases are difficult to search, but actually more so than that, if they've got millions of candidates on them and you don't know, and your recruiters don't know which people are cold or warm or hire ready in real time, the easiest thing for them to do is to start every search from the beginning. And so I started looking around at, right, other customers, what are they doing? And I found that a lot of them were doing the same thing. They were starting their search from scratch every single time. So I thought we need to provide some kind of a nurture service because we're creating thousands of candidate records for our customers. And I asked them what they were doing with that information. And the answer is they were asking them, these candidates if they're interested at the one time that we give them the data. And if the answer was no, or the answer was no response, then they were just sitting on a spreadsheet or they were sitting on an ATS or somewhere where they couldn't actually do anything with them. And I thought we need to provide a nurture service. And then it occurred to me that a nurture service was actually going to involve sending content to people regularly to keep them warm. But actually you'd be sending the same content to everybody because you didn't really understand enough about people's individual preferences. And then, very luckily, I met a guy called Scott McRae, based in Glasgow, who's one of the world's leading experts around marketing automation technology. And he told me how it all works. And I said, well, hold on, this is exactly what is needed in talent acquisition. And we went through all of the different workflows on the general sales and marketing side. And there was an equivalent parallel in talent acquisition. So we then looked around the market and asked some people, if this existed, if this kind of technology existed in talent acquisition, would it help you achieve your objectives? They mostly said yes, and that gave us enough impetus to go and create a very simple version of a product. We gave them half a dozen different names and said, which of these do you like? No one name came out on top, so we actually came up with a seventh name, which is Candidate ID. And we soft launched the product for free to customers in 2016 and more formally launched on a paid basis in January 2017.
Wow.
So we've been running this technology product for 2 years, and I've had to go from being a recruitment consultant 20 years ago to CEO of a tech startup, which is very, very exciting.
And have you just learned the skills on the job? Or have you got any non-execs on board to kind of guide you through it? Like, how does somebody go from just working a desk or maybe managing a few people to being a tech startup person? Like, it's
well, there's been a couple of transition phases, I guess. One was going from permanent employment in 2009 to working for myself, and it's a lonely process. It can be very lonely when you're the only founder of the business and you've got people's salaries to pay, and that's a real challenge. And so that was something that I think I've got a lot of tenacity and I've got a lot of patience, and those two things I think are really critical if you want to run your own business. And so I had to call on them really deeply in those first few years, especially especially when we were in recession, and especially at the beginning, and also during the transition from out of recession, when companies suddenly had budgets again and didn't really know what they were doing with them. So that's one thing that's important. But probably round about 2012, 2013, I came across Bloomberg Technology, which is a 1 hour TV show which is on every day. And when I realized that YouTube, on YouTube, Bloomberg was splitting it up into like 3-4 minute segments, I found this really, really useful, because I was looking at all the different 3-4 minute clips from Bloomberg Technology, which were to do with social media, because social media was the platform for the business that I was running at that time. And then I started looking at other segments about different types of technology products and how it works. And I came across a TV program called Techstars, which is about an incubator, a famous tech incubator. And I started watching some of their programs about this is how you do it, and this is how the mistakes you make. And some of the insights were from experts, some of them from venture capitalists, some of them from entrepreneurs working really hard to build their own businesses. And I thought, hold on a second, there's a completely different world here, which I hadn't appreciated, which is this tech startup world. And it occurred to me to kind of look out for what opportunities might there be to make a transition into this area. So I was learning. I was just doing a lot of research on how you go about doing this. And then when I had that conversation with that pharmaceutical company, I thought, we need to work out a tech solution to this problem. I think unlike a lot of other tech businesses, our company's full of marketing people. So we're probably 70% marketing people and 30% tech people, which is not the kind of balance you would expect a company like ours to have after 2 years. But we've outsourced really, really wisely. We've got great partnership with a company in India who our chief technology officer has worked with for years. I also approached an old school friend who, with the idea of creating this tech product, and asked him if he would be interested in basically making it in his evenings and weekends. And he said he'd been approached about lots of different things like that. And actually, this was the first time he'd said yes. So he's now effectively our CTO designate. He'll join the business probably later this year, I think, when there's a need for that. But we have hired pretty wisely. We've hired some good tech people based in Glasgow.
Was it always plain? Was it always plain sailing, Adam? Because I can imagine, like, you're in Glasgow, you're not in San Francisco, you're not able to kind of rub shoulders with founders and other angels and all the stuff that you would if you were out there. And you're like, I'm sure your social network probably look at it and go, "What's Adam up to?" I don't like it. I think it's a bigger achievement than simply, if you had have done this in LA or San Francisco or one of the other hubs.
Yeah, I think it's definitely harder to do it here than it is in somewhere like even London. I think it's probably easier to do it from London. And no, it definitely wasn't plain sailing. Absolutely not, because we're doing quite a few things that are breaking the rules around. When you start a tech business, you're not supposed to educate the market. You're supposed to do something that is a slight enhancement on something that already exists. Is making something that already exists better is really what you're meant to do. And what we've created is enabling an entirely different way of doing recruitment. So we've made it really hard for ourselves, because we've built a new brand, we've built a new product, and we're trying to encourage businesses to do things in a different way. And that's too many changes, arguably, at the one time. And that's why during 2016, we had to work really hard on getting some good case studies so that in 2017, we could actually charge people. And at that point, it was just mates rates that we were charging people in 2017. 2018, we charged proper fees. But no, it's not been plain sailing. Other challenges, I guess, have been, it has cost us money to go about building this product and building this brand. And we've had to spend money on events and getting the opportunity to talk at events and travel. And so Scott and I actually merged our businesses informally, end of 2016. Formally, we incorporated as a group structure.
So you brought your social media revenue in.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. So my business and Scott's business came into Candidate ID, and we merged those three businesses as one in March 2018 in order that the two businesses with the historic revenue streams, they would seed the development of this tech product. And that's what we've done so far. We've needed to raise some money slightly beyond that. And so another thing that we've had to learn how to do is go and work with investors and go and raise external investment. And I had 90 conversations with 40 different individuals in July, August, September last year. And then it actually wasn't until October when we won that competition where we started getting investors coming to us going, yeah, we're interested actually. And that was a real turning point. So I think the experience of having gone and spoken to so many investors over a short period of time also gave us a really good understanding of what investors are looking for, and also helped us to shape the strategy for our current business. In terms of other advisors, Scottish Enterprise and their high growth startup unit have been absolutely brilliant. And some of the courses that they've sent me on with people from Harvard and MIT have been really, really invaluable. In fact, one of them, which was a two-week course in summer 2016, was absolutely life-changing. The things that I learned from the people running that course from Harvard and MIT. And they've appointed an advisor to us called Richard Beattie, who's a guy who built and sold his own tech business about 20 years ago. So he's been around the block quite a few times, and he's somebody that's been really useful. And we appointed a guy as a board advisor at the beginning of last year called Bill Berman, that some people listening to this might have heard of. And Bill is a well-known recruitment tech advisor. He talks at almost every conference that happens around the world. So, I mean, it's hundreds of conferences he talks at. And he's been great on the product side. And we also brought in a guy called George Elliott, who was formerly the CFO of a company called Wolfson Microelectronics. He is a tech chairman. He's a stock market tech company chairman who sold a business to Facebook about 18 months ago. So we have brought in some really, really good advisors to fill in gaps, areas where we don't have the same personal knowledge. Collaborating with other people has been fundamental.
Now, people are going to be thinking, why did Dota bring Adam onto the podcast? He's very talent acquisition focused in his product. And Adam.
Yes.
So the reason I wanted to bring you onto the podcast was when I started doing this 8 months ago, I think I was kind of coming into it from the perspective of thinking I knew quite a lot from maybe agencies that I've dealt with. But the more that I've learned and I've gone down this rabbit hole, the more I've gone into using social media and automation and like intelligently using data. And I came across your product and and your content, and a lot of it's geared towards the talent acquisition industry. But I can see a clear gap in the agency recruitment market that you could fill. How are you going about that? And are you planning to do anything in this small to medium space?
Yeah, so we work with agencies. We work with Search Consultancy. We work with S3. We work with a couple of others. And we are in no way, when I use the term talent acquisition, I'm using it as a broad term that includes the employer, RPO, and agency space, to be honest. So I'm probably misusing the term slightly. We don't have any bias towards any of these three segments. Anybody that is smart enough to understand that an automated talent pipeline is going to make their job much, much easier we want to be able to support them. So yeah, we love recruitment agencies. Some of them are absolutely not ready to run something like Candidate ID because they're using spreadsheets, and they prefer to just have hundreds of people banging the phones. It's not the way that we encourage any recruiters to do things, because we think the amount of time wasted on reaching out to people that they don't know whether they're cold or they're hot is one of the biggest problems in recruitment across the board, in-house and agency. So we're completely agnostic in terms of who we support. But the second question, which was about, are we going to support the medium-sized kind of company space? The answer is yes, and we do. So a company like Mullings Group, for example, is a medium-sized business that
he makes 9 million a year, though. It's big enough.
Yeah, okay, fine. That might be considered a large organization. I think it's about there is a challenge around price, because our price is £3,500 per month, up to 50,000 candidates. So that's a pretty small database, and it's £3,500. It's £42,000 a year. I would personally say it's going to that's the cost of a recruiter. It's going to deliver a lot more than the cost of one recruiter for an organization.
Yeah.
So it depends on the mindset of the CEO, or if it's big enough, the mindset of the marketing director.
Well, let's jump into how a company could structure themselves to be ready for a product like yours, because I think it's an inevitability rather than a choice in the next 10 years. So what's the first thing that they have to do when they're structuring their business to be ready to use something like your business?
I mean, I think there's a mindset, first of all, and the mindset is cold calling people does not deliver the same as it used to. And the reason for that is very, very simple. Candidates can get a lot of information online. So when I started in recruitment in 1999, I would pick up the phone to the candidates, and if I got hold of them, they would probably be interested in having a conversation, because they weren't getting lots and lots of contact from recruiters. Today, however, they're getting an overwhelming amount of contact from everybody, not just recruiters. So candidates and humans have become very, very good at switching off from messages they're not interested in right now. So I firmly believe that the power is with candidates, whereas it didn't used to be. Mm-hmm. So today they can find out about an organization, they can find out about the hiring manager, they can find out what the coffee tastes like, and they can find out your inside leg measurement. They know almost everything about you as a recruitment business or your client. If you reach out and tell them about Scottish Power are hiring for this person and I want to put you forward, they can find out almost everything about you and about that employer. So they don't need to respond until they've self-directed. They've gone through a self-directed research process, and what that means is they don't want to reply until they're ready. It's on their terms. Now, what that means is there is a diminishing return happening from the concept of cold calling, and how a lot of recruiters or recruitment teams are trying to deal with that is by hiring more recruiters and accepting that each person's yield is going to be a little bit lower year on year, or it's not going to be growing year on year. So there's a recruitment business I know, global recruitment business, and they make 0.9 of a placement per individual per month. Now, when I was a recruiter, I was making about 3 per month. And so the 0.9, and I know you can measure that in lots of different ways, but 0.9 per month sounds like, and this is a company with thousands of recruiters. To me, it doesn't sound like a great number of placements.
It used to be one was to survive, 2 was to do well, and 3 was to do really well.
Yeah. I mean, I was a good recruiter. I did make some decent placements. The reason that I stopped doing it was, quite honestly, I didn't want to talk to part qualified accountants and newly qualified accountants anymore. And that was the main reason that I just didn't want to do it. And I loved the marketing aspects of recruitment. So I was like king of the franking machine, basically. And so I moved into a recruitment marketing agency, a big global recruitment marketing agency, where I knew I was going to be able to do things that I was interested in. But the point around how an agency can evolve is the mindset that more people is not the answer. More people is not the answer. More data is the answer. More information about candidates is the answer. If you understand which candidates are ready to be hired and are clearly they are browsing around your website, they're looking at how to create a great CV, they're looking at how to prepare for interviews, they're looking at the adverts on your website. If you know who those people are, your recruiters have got a hot list every single morning. They know who to pick up the phone to today. They know which candidates to go and approach. And
how do we do that? How does the product do that?
Yeah, so what our product does is it allows you to distribute content to your candidates through email, through text message, through social media, and then it's tracking each person's interactions with your website, with your landing pages that you build from Candidate ID, and with your social media. And then other places like YouTube. Well, YouTube is a social network, I guess. So anywhere that you can add content online, Candidate ID is tracking each person's interaction with that content. And what that means is that you can set up triggers so that anytime candidates do X and Y in that combination, then it'll send your recruiter an email alert straight away to say, this is a candidate you need to pick up the phone to right now.
Because I'm a dummy, I'm going to break this down
a
bit further for if there's anybody as dumb as me out there. But
it's not about being dumb, by the way. This is really, really sophisticated technology.
So I'm rec to rec. I have a database that I more or less use just to save details rather than using it intelligently.
That's normal.
But most of my stuff's on LinkedIn, and I have a tremendous amount of content out there. So at the moment, I'm getting a new website done. It's going to be kind of content heavy. And I had Tris Revel on the other day, and we kind of discussed some of this, but I suppose I want some confirmation bias on it. He suggested that, and another guy, Mark London, also said to me,
yes,
you need to get your data off LinkedIn and into like, you know, a CRM, and then you need to use that intelligently. But my understanding, so I have tons of content, and we'll be creating more content in the next while. I feel like I don't know who's really watching or listening to the content, and exactly. I don't know who is in the mood for me to reach out to. How, firstly, like, should I get some kind of data person to go through LinkedIn to make a massive pool of potential people that we want in our pipeline? Like, how does that whole thing work? Like, I feel like I've got a couple of wee pieces of the puzzle to figure out.
So there's three things you need to make this work. The first is you need the data, which is the candidate records. The second is you need the content. And then the third thing is you need software that is going to pull it all together for you in a way where you can track what each candidate's doing. There's a benefit to candidates, by the way, in a minute. I'll explain that. But if, for example, so you create podcasts. Mm-hmm. If you are posting on LinkedIn, take a look at my new podcast with X person. We cover this subject and this subject. I think recruiters need to listen to this, especially between minutes 20 and 40. That's where the gold is for you. Then anybody that clicks on that link that's generated through Candidate ID or a more mainstream marketing product that does a similar thing, that link sends a signal back to Candidate ID to tell them that candidate has done that particular activity. And it allocates them a certain number of engagement points according to how important you deem that activity is.
Okay.
So, for example, if somebody opens your email, then that might score 1 point. If they click on a link, which is for your podcast, it might score 3 points. If they then go to your website and look at a landing page, which is how to create a great CV, or here's what's going on in the market right now for recruiters, then that might score 15 points. It's a much higher indicator that they're ready for a conversation. And it might send your recruiter at the same time an alert to say, you need to pick up the phone to Jane Smith, and here's her details. So how it's actually tracking people is there's three real components in here. The first is cookie tracking. So if they open an email from you with a pixel embedded in that email, that activates the cookie, and that means that you can track what they do from there on content that you can control online. The second aspect is IP recognition. So once the cookie's been activated, Candidate ID syncs that up with the person's specific unique IP address, so that anything they do from there, even if they clear their cookies, is still going to be tracked. And then the third thing is a component we have called Fingerprint, which allows us to look at what's the person's device, what location are they at, what's their browser, what's their operating system, and a bunch of little clues which mean that we can identify people even when they go across devices. So that's how it works from a technical perspective. But the impact of all of that means that any candidates that are on your database that you are using a product like Candidate ID to nurture those candidates, you're able to see in real time and serve up your recruiters every single day with here's hot candidate leads based on what they're doing. You're doing something great personally. You're doing some really, really great content, and you've absolutely got that nailed. The bit that you're missing, as you just mentioned, is the ability to understand who's looking at that content. Even if you can see how many people are looking at it, if you don't know who's looking at it, then it's kind of difficult to justify the ROI, which is why ROI on content is absolutely achieved through this type of talent pipeline process.
Yeah, and I definitely do want to get the next bits in. I suppose as a small business owner, it's very hard to outlay the £3,000 a month. Even if I know that I'd get it back, it's that's a big expenditure. So
it's a brave step to make. As I say, I mean, there's an I'm not suggesting here that this is an alternative to humans. But for my colleague Steve Ward was on stage at the Recruitment
He's been on this podcast as well.
Right. Okay. So he was on the Rec Expo last week in London, and he was on stage talking about maybe your next hire should actually be a piece of technology, because that's probably the point where you're that's probably the point. If you've got 6 recruiters in your team, make your next hire some talent pipeline software. Those 6 people are going to be more effective. They're going to make more placements each. And that's what we're seeing across all of our customers. One organization you'll be familiar with, Specsavers, have restructured their team. Mm-hmm. They've actually got less recruiters than they had 18 months ago, but each recruiter is making more placements as a result of the fact that they've got a couple of people that are running talent pipelines and serving them up with hot leads. So they've got about the same number of people in their recruitment team. This is a recruitment agency, by the way. This is Specsavers Recruitment Services, is what they're called. They have one customer. They have one customer, which is Specsavers, but it is a recruitment agency, complete recruitment agency model, and they're making more placements than they were. As a result of the fact that they've got a couple of people they've redeployed to be running pipelines. So there's actually less recruiters in the business now.
Interesting. I'm bought in. You've sold me before I was on I even brought you on because I've been following your content, and you know when you're doing something wrong in your business and you're just like, oh, I just need to make that next adjustment. I feel like I'm on the cusp of trying to figure that piece out. What do you think? Just to finish up, where do you see the future of recruitment going? Because you've obviously saw the social stuff quite quickly. You've seen the automation and the AI and that quite quickly as well. Yeah. What's around the corner?
So firstly, I believe it's all about candidates. It's all buyers buy, sellers don't sell today. So I firmly believe that it's about giving people an experience that is really useful for them, and generating goodwill, generating rapport, and positioning your own organization as the one that people immediately think of when they decide that they're going to look for new opportunities.
So almost like being a media company.
I firmly believe that the future for recruitment companies is, as you could call it, a media company, you could call it a community. And I can see even large recruitment organizations we work with, who are turning the wheel into that direction, because they absolutely believe that the transactional nature of recruitment is a thing of the past, and it's not. Of course, you can make money doing that today. Absolutely, you can. In 10 years' time, I think it's going to be very, very difficult to make money out of being a transactional recruiter. I think that if you build a following, if you build goodwill and you build trust and you show you're an industry expert and that you're constantly adding value to candidates' careers, whether they're looking for a job or they're not. Incidentally, that's the bit that a lot of recruiters ignore, including some of the biggest employers. They completely ignore the fact that 80% of people are not looking for a job, that's according to LinkedIn. And all of their content is aimed towards people who are tentatively coming into the market and in the market. And you, for example, are doing a perfect kind of blueprint for what I would suggest you should do, which is give people content without asking for anything. And your podcast is a great example of that. It's all about skills. It's all about learning new things and insights. And most people really ignore that, and they just want to focus on, right, who can I bring in now and try and place?
With your predictions on the future, what I think that looks like then is it means less bodies in each recruitment room. That maybe it might be the personal brand might be super important based on that.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure if it's less people in your recruitment company, but it's definitely less people needed to do the final bit, which is make the placement. Because when I started in recruitment 20 years ago, I was doing everything from identifying the people through to negotiating what package they were getting. And I don't think that recruiters are really I don't think humans are the right people to be doing all of that process, because it's just there's too much heavy lifting at the top of the funnel.
Yeah.
Going from, right, I find 100 people, I don't know anything about them except for they've got the right job title on LinkedIn. That is not a smart way of working, and it's not the future. So, yeah. Might not be less people in the industry, but probably less people actually doing the final bit of this process, which is making the placement.
Yeah. I like the sound of the first business you were talking about as well, that you could almost get your social media sourcing done on autopilot. Is that still working?
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's I wouldn't describe it as autopilot. There's a bit of manual stuff in it, but it's
but maybe the first bit of the funnel isn't like.
Yeah, there's tools and things you can use, and listen, Trish Revel and Mark Lundgren know more about those tools than I do. But we've got people in our office who are using a lot of automation tools to identify the total addressable market. And that's something that I really believe in, is the concept of who is your total addressable market, just not who's in the market today. Yeah. So it's the opposite of the job board kind of way of doing things, which is identifying who's in the market today. Who is the total addressable market? And I think if you know who all of those people are, you can bring them all onto your CRM. And Mark and Trish are right about that, by the way. Using LinkedIn as your primary platform and your primary way of communicating with people is great for LinkedIn, because they're getting data from every single thing that you're doing on there. But when you want to extract all of that data, they're either going to charge you a lot of money to do it, or they're going to stop you doing it. You really want to control your own ecosystem, which might involve social networks. It might involve tracking what people are doing and communicating with people at LinkedIn and Twitter and other places. But you really want to create your own domain, and you want people spending more time on your website and your landing pages than anywhere else.
All right, Adam. That I hope everybody was able to digest all of that. I certainly got a lot from it.
I feel like I've talked about a lot of different things, so I really hope it's been useful.
Yeah. If you're struggling with any of this, jump back and come along the journey that I've been on to get to this point. Adam, thanks so much for coming on. Really, really appreciate it. And yeah, it'd be great if we could catch up sometime you're down south.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to do that. And thank you very much for having me on. I'm really privileged and appreciate it.
Brilliant stuff. Talk again.
Thank you. Bye.
Well, a massive thank you to Adam for coming on the podcast, and some interesting facts. He's actually went to school with two of our previous guests, Kwame Dean and James Hickman. So I don't know what was in the school canteen dinner there, but it's definitely produced some impressive individuals. I suppose the lasting thought I have from that interview is the question that many of you will be asking yourselves in the next couple of years is, should you hire another person, or should your next hire be a piece of software? And one of the interesting stats that he brought up was that at one of the major firms that he has data from, they're making less than one placement a person. And that's down from 5 years ago or 3 years before. And it's indicative of a changing landscape in the way that we're operating. It's harder now to make more placements than it was for bigger agencies in the past. I don't know what the stats are for independent recruiters. I mean, I think the market is wide open for independent recruiters to set up, and something like this could only help. But if we're looking at a reduction in ROI per headcount, perhaps it is time to look at software as a way to scale our business. And that doesn't mean getting rid of the human element, but I think it does mean getting rid of things that are better done by software, and then leaving the final piece, the bit that he mentioned, Joe Mullings, and Joe's business has implemented this. They've got the media bit, and then they use the pay-per-click stuff on Facebook and all the other channels to do the proper advertising. So what that means for his recruiters, it's a really good example actually, Joe's, the Mullings Group. And if you want to know who Joe is, jump back into a previous episode I did with him, and we discussed all of this and his process and all the rest. But what that means for his recruiters is that whenever they go to pick up the phone, they're not randomly calling through a database, and they're not just being reactive on job boards or ads that they've put out there. It means that when somebody does pick up a piece of content that you've done, or opens your email, or any of the other trigger points that Adam has discussed, it means that your recruiter will get a signal that that person is more likely to be a buyer than the next person, and thus increase your chances of getting a placement. All sounds really simple, all really complex to implement in the right way, and it's definitely something that if I was a little larger, I'd be jumping on right away. Hopefully they'll have something released for the small people of our industry like myself in the coming year. But again, thanks so much, Adam, for coming on. Great guest, great guy, and I'm sure you all enjoyed it. If you have any questions on any of the stuff that we discussed, or you want more information, Adam is always available on Facebook groups for recruiters. He's active on LinkedIn, and he's just really approachable for a CEO of a startup company. All right, until next time, happy hunting.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.